All right, so this is going to be module 5. We are looking at accessibility online, and I picked two different resources that I've used in my class. I have picked a Google Doc and a Google Slide. Um, it was extremely eye-opening to me to see how a speech to text or text to speech worked on a Word, Microsoft Word. So that video that really showed that demonstration of how that screen reader navigates a Word document um, truly opened my eyes to how it is, because I never really thought about how something was read based off of how I inputted it into a document or Google slide. I also really wonder how different it is to use a so a Google document or a Google slide versus a Word document or a PowerPoint. So I'd be curious to see how a screen reader would navigate a Google Doc to see what the differences would be. Because one of the things that was mentioned in the online handbook was that Google Docs doesn't have headers. And so I'm curious though, because, over here it's mentioning my outline. So, would it be better to put an outline? Do I need to add the summary? What is truly best whenever we have that screen reader reading a Google Doc? Um, so there are some things that I need to make sure that I am being mindful of, and that is going to first be the table. So I use tables very often in my notes. And so I need to make sure that I'm looking at the fact that, I have a merged cell here, and how would that be read? And making sure, like, you know, uh, what I want conveyed, is it, exactly how it would be read as what I am trying to say? Because, I never really thought about the fact that how it is on the Google Doc, makes sense to me, but if it's not being read in the way that I intended, then, it's not going to make any sense. So I would definitely want to actually kind of preview how this would be read to see what I would need to change. Like, um, do I need to make sure that I have, these not necessarily set up as rows, but more as columns? Like, should I do property and then that one underneath of it? Should they be more together? So, like, should I say the reflexive property is whenever A is equal to A? Like, do I need to be more straightforward and have everything all in one cell? Um, so, really looking at how I would set this up, so listening to it would be interesting to see, because I think I would be changing a lot of my tables around based off of that. I think I would try and make sure I had everything together, as I mentioned, like reflexive property is when A is equal to A, and putting that all into one cell instead of having it be a column with two cells there. The other thing is, with Google, right? I'm just going to insert and putting in an equation in. And is that being read the correct way? Or do I need to use a math plugin? And do math plugins work in Google Docs? I've never really used a math plugin before. So I would be interested to see how that would work in Google, and going with that. The other thing I wanted to mention is that all of my students do get a copy of the notes just like this, like where they're blank. And so in the Tier 1 accommodation in Table 8.1 from Chapter 8, it just mentioned that an accommodation would be to provide notes or recorded lessons. And so one of the things that I do is all the kids get a blank copy of the notes, and then during the actual lesson, I record it in real time with my kids, and then I save the video and a PDF of the copy of the notes that we just filled out together. And then I upload both of those things to my learning management system, which is Schoology. And so therefore students are able to get a copy of my own notes that are filled out. They're also able to get a copy of the recorded lesson. So if they needed to go back and watch it again or sit and listen to it one more time or whatever the case might be, that they have access to that. So having that tier one accommodation has been extremely helpful in all of my classes for students who are not only absent, but for those who are present and might just have missed something. The other resource that I've picked is a Google slide. So in this Google slide, I have a template, and what's happening here is the students are given a trig identity. So we can see here with that, and then the students are able to move around different pieces. And so I would have to go in and create a alt text to this and having that in there. So, I need to make sure that I'm explaining what this actually is saying. Then the other thing that I would be interested to seeing is can this read? So, like, would I have to type out cosine squared? And so, first, I can't just put cos, I guess, right? So, cosine squared alpha plus sine, and like, do I have to write out the word plus, or do I kind of just put the plus sign? So I think this would take some time and the ability to have that screen reader kind of read it back to me before I would ever give it to a student, just so I can get used to what is being read and what I actually want them to hear. So I would need to go into all of my slides here and add in that alt text so that way it's read to them as exactly what that image is. I would also probably potentially take away some of these that would be a little harder to type in what the image is actually being read, and find another way to get the kids to practice this particular skill, just because I'm not sure how well I would be able to get that image across of what it is that's being asked. So I'd probably try to go a different direction whenever having this Google slide be the assignment for some of these questions. So those are my two slides that are two documents that I've had. So that Google Doc and this Google slide here. The other thing with this Google slide, while I'm thinking about it, is making sure that I would have that math text in a way, because Google Slides do not like math text. And so I guess this is where a good math plugin would work, because usually I go about it by just entering in screenshots of what I want to enter. So if that's the case, I would really need to make sure that I'm adding in that alt text to have exactly what I want read to the students. So yeah, this is probably actually one of the more eye-opening things, because I've heard of this accommodation. I've never dealt with it, and I've never tried to change any of my resources to this accommodation since I've never had to deal with it before. So it was very eye-opening to see how whenever we're creating things, we don't necessarily have in mind how it would be read to somebody, because I think we just take it for granted as to, well, like, this is what it looks like, so that's what I'm assuming they'll understand and go from there. So it was kind of nice, and it kind of seems like maybe we should be formatting some of these things in that way all the time, no matter what, because maybe the kids are visually also going to understand it a little bit more in that aspect too. So like, right, heading 1, and then heading 2, heading 3, etc., like we saw in the Microsoft Word video, maybe more kids would understand, okay, like, hey, that's what that's meaning, instead of us just assuming, oh, hey, they should know what that is kind of. So really neat to look at and trying to think about how I would change my two components. Again, I'd be very curious to see if it's truly very different from a Google Doc versus Microsoft Word, or if it'd be relatively the same, on how that screen reader would navigate between those two different things.